to do it on the fly. It's not our usual time, and so
Right.
I don't have, mice have been eating my candle, but I have it. I'm serious. I don't know if you can see this or not, but well, we will virtually light it because I can't find my matches.
Okay.
But this collective light of inspiration and faith, may it lead us into a better tomorrow, together as a board and together as a fellowship. It's good to share. It's good to share the light. Thank you, Bradley.
Great. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have one thing on our agenda, which is to talk about the roof. And sorry for the barking dog. She wants to be a part of this too. So Larry or Dave, do either one of you want to talk about the additional information that you have sent to us to review?
I can start. We did send you this good news report, which is really pretty overwhelming from our perspective, and I would assume from yours as well, that following the last board meeting, Dave and I made contacts with just a handful of people, longtime members of the organization, and the response that we got was absolutely overwhelming. And I have shown that there on the last page. You see the summary of where we stand at the moment, but we have really been pledged more money than we need for the roof, at least when you consider what the board had already said that they would support. So we're in good shape. There are some decisions that need to be made. First one being to award a construction contract, and I think that should be pretty straightforward at this point. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. Bradley, I think you already have a copy of the contract to be signed, do you not?
I have the notice of award, and I just sent a message to the administrator who's been working with us to check in with me tomorrow morning to make sure that I have everything that I need. Because there's a lot to sort through, and I want to make sure that we get the right things turned in.
So Bradley, if you would like, when you think you have that, I can review it because I'm pretty familiar with the contracting process and know what all documents you need. So I can
Yeah.
come by and check that out if you're concerned about it.
It runs in my head that it's just the notice of award, and then there was one addendum for construction oversight to the original contract. I think that's it, but I'm sure she'll get back to me. I sent it to her just about 20 minutes ago, so I'm sure she'll get back to me first thing in the morning.
Bradley, that construction oversight would be for the engineering contract, not
Right.
for the construction contract.
Right.
We
right.
will have a slight increase in engineering because they are doing a bigger project now and are providing a bit more supervision. But it still is less than it would be had we done the project in 2 phases.
Technically, you wouldn't need to approve that engineering addendum till sometime later because that fee is not going to be incurred until toward the end of the project. So the first thing is just getting the construction contract, notice of award and the construction contract approved would be the primary goals this evening.
So we would recommend that the board authorize the president to sign a contract with Brockway Mechanical and Roofing for $296,500 and authorize the president to sign that contract.
I so move.
Oh,
I will second.
okay, do we have any
I
discussion?
second.
Does anybody have any further discussion about the contract or the roofing? Okay, we're gonna do this. Is there anyone against signing this contract? Okay, then we will say that we have yays and no nays. All right. One of the things that we had discussed last time was the surplus amount, the $10,000.
Correct.
We did have some question last time about, we also want to upgrade the audio-visual equipment to be able to do hybrid services. And so we thought maybe it would be easier to take that 10,000 and put it toward that, and then raise the additional funds for the roof instead of asking for two things to raise additional funds for. So that was one of the things that we had questions on last time.
Yeah, because I think one of the questions that Larry and I have is, based on the condition of our phone calls and the response we got of whether we should have a, congregation-wide capital campaign that will be a short for some specific smaller amounts, maybe $20,000 or $30,000. If we could raise that, then either the capital fund in the endowment or the money that the fellowship pledged out of their surpluses could be saved and used for whatever other purposes you guys had in mind. So I would.
Right.
I would say, however, that we did kind of proceed on the basis of the discussions from the last board meeting, which were that there would be this $35,000 available from these three accounts.
Mhm.
And I used that in my conversation with potential donors.
As
And
did I.
I don't know that that's a deal breaker, but I did kind of indicate that we did have that level of support from the board. So if you choose to do otherwise, it will require a little finessing, but I think it can be managed.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion due to the fact that we would have to have two fundraising campaigns, one for the roof and one for upgrading the audiovisual. And so we just thought that maybe that would kind of hinder the fundraising for both, and so we thought if we could just do fundraising for one, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But
Well, how would it be if you went ahead on the basis of what you had indicated previously and allocate that $35,000, put that into the roof fund? If at the point where we have excess, and I think we will end up with a little excess, it could then come out of that excess or come out of the capital improvement fund that we have in the endowment account.
Yeah, we still have a fair amount of money in the capital reserve that could be used for your audiovisual. But I agree with Larry. I think even with the modest additional fundraising campaign, that we will end up with some excess that you'll have to figure out what to do with, which is always a nice option.
right. So I guess maybe Stephanie, I'd like to hear a little bit from you as far as those funding sources and
Yeah,
just hear.
the 35 that's in the budget, I was fine with that. My concern is, as you know, has been on the 2022 budget. That's where my concern was, is that a capital campaign would hurt us on 2022 because we will have to fill a $20,000 hole in that budget. So that's where my concern is. You know, I was kind of hoping that maybe the reopening of the fellowship will get people excited about upping their pledges. But for those folks that are, you know, kind of locked into, I can only, you know, pledge X dollars to the UU, I would really want those small dollars to stay with pledges instead of going to capital. That was my whole thing.
The chairman of the generosity team happens to be sitting right at my left hand.
Yeah, I think that it's unfortunate that the roof came at the time when we also are trying to upgrade our ability to provide hybrid services for people. And so there's just this little bit of a fear that we might be asking too much. And so, but I understand the roof is very important. So, I mean, it's pretty much protecting everything that we have at the fellowship. The audiovisual, I don't know if it's if it's as necessary as the roof, but it is something that we were hoping to be able to implement to make things a little bit easier for us to come back together and do a little bit more social distancing and providing the ability to have people be there and participate in milestones, etc. So I don't know, Sam.
What's your estimate of the cost on that AV upgrade?
I'm meeting with a consultant at the fellowship tomorrow morning. But in ballpark terms, it'll probably be somewhere in the 5,000 to 10,000 range. That's with a lot of ifs and unknowns still, but that's the, at the back of a napkin level, that's the right ballpark.
There's more than adequate reserve in the capital fund and the endowment to deal with that under absolute worst case conditions of this. So I guess I wouldn't be real worried about that. And to Stephanie's concern about the budget for next year, that I think Larry and I are confident that all the people we've talked to that have been the major donors, that's not going to bother their next year's contributions at all.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Now, when we were talking about those small selling shares and that kind of thing, that's when I got scared. But the plan you've laid out, I'm very comfortable with.
Okay. All right. Well, this is exciting. I think the last time I left a little bit nervous, not wondering how we were going to raise those funds and how we were going to do the additional upgrades. And so I'm excited that Dave and Larry, that you guys went out and asked to give us a much more comfortable idea of how this is going to come together. So I really appreciate the extra work that you did.
I will say it surprised the heck out of both of us. Thank you.
But I'm standing here because at 7 o'clock, the generosity team meets. And, we will be having conversations about what comes up next and any special kind of fundraising. So I was wanting to be informed about that.
Right.
The question about whether there needs to be an opportunity for people to contribute to the roof is still a question.
Right. That's the one thing we would like you to deal with if we need to, or even should go ahead with a general fundraiser to hopefully raise another 20,000 or 30 to make sure we got all of your wishes covered. And I don't think that's out of line, and it could be very low key and not take more than 3 or 4 weeks of doing it just to see what happens. I don't think we need to beat on people or anything.
Okay, what does that look like? What does that campaign look like, and who would take care of it? Would it be the generosity team? running that?
Well,
I
I
don't
we
think they
saw that
volunteered
Dave
for
and
that.
I could probably do that on a pretty low-key basis.
You know, we
Okay,
were talking about maybe some announcements, at Sunday services and some notices in the weekly newsletter and in the, just some of those fairly low-key things, and maybe talking to a few more people that we know that we haven't talked to yet. And
okay,
that's about it.
Right. What we did with the last one, which was the Burn the Mortgage campaign, it was essentially, aside from the matching component, which that's kind of its own ball game. As far as logistics of the day-to-day operation of a campaign, it was very low key. There was a small group, and I think Larry was on it, that wrote and Dave was on it as well, that wrote a letter and it went out. And I kind of pumped it up with a whole bunch of social media posts and some graphic things, but really that was just fluff, and we don't necessarily need to do that. I do definitely support the idea personally, of giving everyone the opportunity to participate. I think that's a really good way to share the burden, share our generosity.
Should we mention the audio-visual upgrade as part of that?
It's hard. I think it's hard to combine them, but audio visual seems to me to have a lot of appeal in terms of fundraising.
I would think so too.
yeah, I just didn't want to overwhelm people with two big purchases at once kind of thing, but if we could package it as upgrading the building or something, along those lines, I can see us putting it together in a package like that.
Mhm.
I would prefer it to be in a package together than separate and competing.
Good idea.
Great.
No, I'm thinking that we, be real honest and transparent, that we've been very successful in raising a lot of money for the roof replacement, and we're, a little bit short, and would like to give you an opportunity to help. And that's, we'll think about the wording and leave it at that.
We can also play the angle of, we have a fairly strong history here of doing this, of asking and people give. We have a very strong history of being generous, and that kind of language can lend itself well, coinciding with the anniversary, the 75th anniversary.
Right, taking care of the building,
Right.
taking care of our fellowship, and so
Mhm.
that we can go another 75 years.
Some of
Yeah.
our roofs are almost as old as the fellowship. So,
I think some of our audio visual stuff is too.
I think you're right.
I like the idea of connecting, we could tie it together with connecting with everyone inside and outside of the building. Because we have the audio visual that will be connecting folks who are not necessarily able or willing during COVID to come in, while at the same time we have a roof over our head that will connect us inside the building for a longer term.
Yeah, but we also need to make sure that when we do word this, that we're not putting fear into people thinking that we're opening too soon, that as soon as we get the audio visual, we're going to open up the building, because that's not our plan. Our plan is, since we're out of the building, it's easier to be able to do the roof. It's easier to get this audio visual stuff, without having to schedule around things. So this is a good time to do this, so that when we do use the building again, all of these things are taken care of, and we don't have to alter our schedules. But I just want to make it clear that it isn't the audio visual that's going to determine the opening, or the roof replacement. Either one of those is going to determine the opening of the building. So.
Nope. Good point.
Is it premature to talk about the pledge drive for next year at this point? Again, I'm still back to my old thing about, we get everybody fired up to donate to this, and they're going to say, whoops, I
Mhm.
can't raise my pledge. Sorry to keep bringing up the same thing, but
I-
I was comfortable
think-
until everybody got excited about this.
Where did,
I
where
feel-
did Sue go? There she comes.
There she-
You know, 2 years ago, we asked people to, stretch. And they did. What we always find is that the people at the top of the giving are most likely to stretch. And so what we would like to figure out a way to do is people in the middle, figure out how to encourage them to stretch if they can. I mean, sometimes I think it's just a matter of not knowing. So, and then last year, we asked people to keep doing what they'd been doing. We really didn't go after an increase, but there were some increases and we had some increase. So probably this year would be another year that we look for an increase.
Yeah, we have to have 20,000 to bounce to get the budget to a $13,000 deficit next year. We have to have $20,000 more in pledges. Because that was our one-time savings. We have to fill that hole.
What happens if the hole is filled by over giving to this project? Where does that money go?
Be in reserves, so somewhere.
Okay, I'm just curious.
There are legal restrictions.
Mhm.
If people give specifically to a capital campaign, it has to go to capital unless they sign some kind of agreement. But if we're going for transparency and we're going to, I mean, you don't want a letter to go on and on and on. But if we're going to tell people that we've had great success in contacting the people we've already contacted, to me, there's no reason we can't say, as you consider what you might contribute here, please keep in mind that we had temporary savings built into the 2021 budget. And so there will be ground to make up, because the whole, to me, the whole conversation around generosity, what's really driven its success is transparency. It's, we're being very clear about what we're asking. And I think that's made people feel very confident that they're giving to a good cause.
Does anybody know that's on this call a way that we could maybe some indicate that the money will go to this capital campaign, but if we've met our need, is it okay if we push that over to other, to the next year's budget? I'm just curious if there's a way that we can maybe put something in there, or it's just money, they do it for the capital campaign and that's where it sits for forever.
It seems like we ought to be able to put together, sort of a priority of goals. Goal number 1 is the roof. Goal number 2 is the AV. Goal number 3 is insert here.
Hand sanitizer.
Right. It is more hand sanitizer or new chairs or whatever.
Ooh, new chair.
And we could simply just say, here is our, our thermometer towards our goal, and here's how far along we've come. And, maybe at the top of the list is, extra money for next year's budget or reserves, whatever. That way, anyone contributing would understand we're going to fund this first, this next, and excess would go to something.
Yeah, good. Dave, I don't know.
How many
haven't talked
pledges?
about this, but possibly we could put into the endowment account a restricted fund that would say operating reserve or something like that, a relatively small amount, probably 25 to 40,000.
I
But
don't know. I think Stephanie's got that all figured out already from what the current unrestricted surplus funds that we have, that we've got some plans
On the
But-
operating side, I think Larry's asking about the endowment
Yeah,
side.
that
Yeah.
would be the operating side. I'm saying,
Yeah.
could we on the endowment side, have a little pot there that we, if the pledge drive runs $10,000 short some year, that we do have some reserve we can fall back on there in the endowment fund.
Maybe it's be kind of like a endowed chair at the university that you have somebody you're paying for your operating expenses out of some other fund that is not generated. Coming from a business background, I have a small problem with having annual operating expenses handled by something other than some form of income that you can depend on year after year. And if you get a one-time shot, that I don't like doing it that way, but that's not my
Well,
decision.
I
since
don't
I'm not
think
on
you
the
would
board.
want to do that on an every year basis, but if you have that kind of assurance behind you that you could tap when you need it,
Yeah,
I can see
it's
some
like
benefit.
some kind of an emergency fund, which we already have that sort of. It's called the capital replacement, which for kind of for unforeseen circumstances, but
Right.
I don't know.
How many pledging units do we have?
Last year we had, well, maybe there were a few more, about 157.
Okay. Because I was just calculating if we had 200 pledging units and everybody, and this would be like if everybody did $10 more per month, we'd have $24,000. So I
I
don't
would
know
agree
if a
that
new
it-
campaign could, if people could give a little bit more and give a dollar figure.
I would agree that that's an attractive way to frame it. I can say in the last few years, particularly at the beginning of my time, they tried that kind of an approach and it didn't really gain any ground. Although that was before we really started all this generosity work. So it might be better received now.
Lost you.
One other point though, so in the 2021 budget, we have 32,500 budgeted for building and grounds. So could we just use, if we have excess capital campaign money, could we just essentially zero out that budget amount and offset it from capital funds for the year?
I thought we were trying to keep maintenance of building and grounds in our operating budget, though.
Yeah, it's another
yeah,
one-year
had been a
exception kind of
discussion.
thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
And
every.
we've been doing the 1 year, we would be had been doing that type of 1 year exception for all the years previous to, I think, this budget.
Yes, all you're doing is pushing the problem down the road. So that's
Yeah. Yeah, we're at a point now where we need to budget for that stuff.
But I think we,
One of the most important things in fundraising is to have stories to raise money for. I think when we go out for specific things, we can always raise the money. But our budget is, salaries and it's all these things. And we just need stronger stories. And that's what we struggle about in terms of making it real and making people want to buy in. Because I think there is more money to be contributed if people are clear about, why. So I'd be happy to have any input on that.
so
I was going to say on the operating side for next year, Sue, I think to me, one of the critical things is the increase so we can get the membership position. Because that's one of our one-time savings for this year. So if we don't up the pledges, we won't be able to get that membership position back.
Well, if we don't get that membership position back, I'm gonna fund it myself.
No,
Because to
That
me,
was one
that
of-
is the most important thing for us to be
yeah,
doing.
one of my
I
thoughts
agree.
is that,
That,
that could definitely be something that if you had some extra money to set aside, you could call that an endowed position then.
okay.
Pay it.
That's all my concern was, is that we have to cut that position and have money sitting in the endowment. And it's just in the wrong place. Thank
No,
you.
I
I'll
do
shut up now.
Okay,
just-
I've got another question. We've agreed that we're gonna go ahead and sign the contract.
Yep.
We've got verbal agreement from a number of very generous folks that they will help us fund this. Are we going to need to investigate even short-term interim funding to make certain that we're able to cover invoices from this company?
Larry can answer that. I think he had some.
Yeah,
alluded to that
I
in
had
his,
an item in the report on that. Some of the pledges that we have received are over a 3-year span, so we may not have enough cash on hand to write the check when the roofing is completed. So we could be looking at some bridge financing for a maximum of a couple years. I guess my feeling is that the first place we would look is to perhaps just take a loan from our endowment account. We have the pledges to cover them, so that would not be a problem. I don't think we have to make that decision right now. We can kind of see how the numbers come out and how the cash flow goes, because it does appear that we will have enough to cover our needs. But there is the real possibility that we will have a short-term shortfall. So,
Okay.
but our endowment's really good negotiators with really low interest rates. So
yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah, just me personally, I feel much better about this than I did the last time that we talked. So,
it's good.
We do too.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
like happy people and so are we. So that's-
So I don't know. I think I guess maybe I feel like our work here is done. No, Bradley's got something.
So we need to authorize the use of the funds that we have on hand, which is the 2020 operating surplus of $10,000, current unrestricted net assets of $10,000, and designated funds of $15,000, which works out to be where I just had it. Clearing out the memorial gifts pool, which is $49.45, and then taking $5,055 from the Dream It Up and Do It fund. So we can handle those individually, or we can handle them as a package.
I would prefer to do it as a package.
I would make a motion to do that.
Okay.
What's the motion?
I'll second that motion. Thanks, Carol.
Take this one.
Any other discussion on that? All right, again, anyone opposed to using those funding sources? All right, looks like the yays have it.
Okay, and then
Yay!
do we, I don't know that that I can recall a capital campaign ever being formalized from the board. Is that something we need to do? It's on Larry's list of
Right,
authorizations.
I guess
We
all
would feel
like
nice
to
if you were all in
advertise
agreement with
the-
us doing it. So yeah.
okay. Does anyone have a motion for that? Don't make
How
Carol
much-
make all the motions.
You have
I
your
s-
regular board meeting in 2 weeks, is that right? And I think Dave
Yeah.
and I could probably have the outline of the capital campaign for you to look at that time, and maybe we don't need to authorize it now. Maybe you could
Yep,
take a
let
look.
us think about that and
we're
come back
planning
with,
to do. We could put some numbers on it and a time frame, and then you can authorize it.
That sounds good, because you were just about ready to get a blanket authorization to do whatever you wanted. So it's good that you stopped us.
yeah,
What's she saying?
we don't want that.
Well, we have to do it anyhow, so we just as well know what we're doing.
Right?
Okay, and then Larry, the last item on your list was to arrange interim financing. Is that something that can also wait, or?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think we need to do anything there, but just be aware that it probably will be required for a short term.
Okay,
We'll know a lot
That was all
more
that
when we
was
get
on my
done with
list.
the campaign and know how much more money we have and how that's gonna work. So,
Okay. All right, Bradley, now can I say we're done?
yes, but I would love it if ELT would stick around.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I think we'll say that the board meeting is adjourned, and we will now, thank you, Bradley, blow it out. And then Bradley, if you can light it again for ELT, that'd be great.